Good morning. Welcome to another wonderful installment of our virtual seminar Grove. We are very excited to be sponsored by Cedar City and Bryan Head Tourism Bureau. We're grateful that they make this possible, and we're really excited about the discussion that we're going to be having today. Bryan, Artistic Director, who do we have here with us today?
Yes, thanks, Michael. This is Brian Vaughn, Artistic Director at the festival, and I'm thrilled to have Karen Azenberg, the Artistic Director of Pioneer Theater Company in Salt Lake, with us here today to give us some wonderful insight and anecdotes about being a producer in Salt Lake, and also just a little bit of insight in her amazing career. I thought I'd give a little bit of an overview of her bio. Karen has been a longtime director, choreographer for many years, was a freelance artist before she came to Pioneer in 2012, right? As the artistic director there. Since that time, she has done numerous productions, directed for them and choreographed, including The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime, the regional premiere of that production here in Utah, as well as Newsies and new plays, including the world premiere of I. And she's also been instrumental, I guess, in many organizations here in the States. She's directed for us here at the Utah Shakespeare Festival in our production of Mary Poppins a couple of seasons back. And she's also been a former president of the Stage Directors and Choreographers Society, SDC, what we know as the Directors and Choreographers Union. And she's a treasure here in the state of Utah. And like us, like me, someone who has similar woes as a producer and an artistic director, but essentially also has an incredible background as an artist and a performer, and is really kind of an artist manager also, which I admire and understand. And we're very grateful to have her here with us today. It's good to see you, Karen. Thank you for being here.
You guys are great. It's fun to be with friends.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, these are, trying times in the world of theater. And obviously that's something we may talk about a little bit, but it is great to see you. And I hope you're doing well in the midst of so much uncertainty also. But I also want to just give a little bit of background about you. You have an amazing career, actually, and a lot of stuff that people don't know about you. You come from a theatrical family. Your father, Emmanuel Azenberg, is one of the premier producers of the American theater, produced countless shows on Broadway, and essentially been the pipeline, the funnel for a lot of Neil Simon's works. And that to me is just incredible. I wonder as a child, for you, seeing that happening, what was that like? Was that something that essentially kind of triggered you to go into the arts, knowing you had a theatrical background, a family? And I know you started as an artist and then sort of segued into other things. Can you give us a little bit of background about that?
Well, when I was very young, my dad would always say, don't grow up to be an actor. Don't grow up to be an actor. And so the logic of a 9-year-old was, okay, I'll be a dancer. And that was literally why I started dancing, because I couldn't be an actor. And then obviously the whole puzzle of why he was saying that came together of, how difficult a career it all is. Anything in the arts, actor, dancer, musician, director, anything. And the turnaround moment for me, because my dad's amazing, and at 87 is going strong. So that's a wonderful thing for me to have that resource in my life still. But
yeah,
when I was trying to make the decision about what to do for college, and I had applied to several dance conservatory programs and several liberal arts colleges with dance departments. And when I made the decision that I wanted to go to NYU, to the Tisch School, sitting at the dinner table and having to sort of make that case to my parents and standing up to my dad was like a big moment. And I realized years later that for him, it was, how bad do I want it? Because you gotta want it really bad. And if I was willing to sort of make my case and stand up to my parents about that, that at least I was a step closer to maybe being able to manage this industry. So he, you know, he taught me a lot of lessons. It was, but you don't get it when you're a little kid, and I'm sure your kids find this, Brian. I mean, it's what your parents do. I didn't realize until I was like a teenager that everybody's parents' dad particularly wasn't home for dinner every night. I mean, you know, my dad had to go to the theater. In those years, he wasn't always the producer. He was a general manager, a company manager, and had to check in as the show started at night. So he would get home at 8 or 8:30.
Right.
So he wasn't there for dinner. That was normal for us, you know.
Yeah.
So it's all interesting how the perspective of it changes. So I just thought it was a job like everybody else's, doctor, lawyer, teacher, parent.
Yeah.
But I loved going backstage. I loved seeing the craft of it. I mean, to this day, I'm such a geek of how do you do that? How does that magic happen?
Well, that's one of the things I was going to say is, you know, being on the outs, watching the creation of theater, you know, and especially from an intimate perspective with your father, who's producing these, you know, countless shows, plays, musicals, and Broadway, with this amazing talent all across the board, designers, directors, actors, other producers, choreographers, music directors. That had to have formulated something in you about the creation of the work, this idea of the collective body coming together to create these storytelling. And do you think that was, did you recognize that happening while you were watching it? But I mean, I look at that now and I go, that had to have been part of the makeup of you, both as a choreographer also, you know, of kind of arranging movement and bodies in a room to convey feeling and a story and emotion. Do you think some of that has helped you as a producer, though, some of that insight now?
Oh, yeah. I mean, first of all, I think I understood all those other jobs much earlier than other people, you know, that for the actors on stage who obviously make a giant contribution to the work, bringing it to the audience, but the team around them that gets the actors to where they're able to give that show to an audience is so large and so extensive and so critical. And I think I'm very lucky because I was able to understand the importance of those people earlier than another person might. And so I actually
do you remember,
loved, pardon me?
I'm sorry, do you remember when you acknowledged, wow, I know all those other people? It kind of feeds into what Brian's question is. I mean, did you recognize that at 17, at 21, at 24, when you realized, wow, this career is much larger than this?
When I was 16, I choreographed on the town for my high school. So I always liked that part.
That's not an easy show to start at the beginning of your career. That's a lot of movement. Let's just be honest.
But like the job I credit with giving me my giant big break, I was 24. I mean, it's insane when I think about it. And I was offered, I had worked at 23 at Michigan Opera Theater in Detroit, doing Sweeney Todd for them. Michigan Opera's a big company, and they perform at the Fisher Theater in Detroit, which is a theater that my dad toured to, and I had been at when I was 3. I mean, the whole thing was like this big circle of life. If you're a theater person coming around. So I had done the Sweeney, which is teeny. I mean, that's a little bit of choreography. And the next year they were doing West Side Story, and they offered for me to choreograph West Side Story, which is for a choreographer like, you know, the Macbeth and Hamlet and the, you know, pick the highest level of musical theaterdom. But I wasn't going to recreate Jerome Robbins' choreography. I was doing my own. And I just accepted it and was like, great, sure, cool. And I did it, and it was a huge success for them. I got a nice amount of attention, and I was 24 years old. But there's a wonderfulness about being 24 and just saying, yes, sure, I'll do it. That at 33, I might have said, oh, I don't know, maybe I'm not ready for that. Like, you just go and do. And I think I'm lucky that I was able to sort of know that I wanted to be a choreographer while I was in college, put my focus on that, and then go right to it. I didn't understand that there were all these, well, I did, but you know, you can't be a choreographer until you've been a dancer, until you've had a career, till you've established yourself, till you're a something. I was just a bossy 24-year-old, you know, and now I'm a bossy more than 24-year-old.
No, that is, I mean, that, you know, the trial by fire elements of things. It's like, no, you got to just get in there and start making it happen is something, you know? Yeah. I mean, you must see that as an artistic director now too, the same thing. It's like, you know, there's no blueprint for this. I mean, there is a little bit, you know, some stories and all this kind of stuff, but you know, every day is a new experience, a new thing, and a new task in front of you, a new challenge. And that's kind of one of the beauties about doing it, you know, that it's always evolving. It's always new and always challenging. But those skills, yeah, it forces you to kind of get in there and make decisions and make it happen. But it is also like the collective body around you helping you do that, you know, which I think is probably some of that same genesis for you as a choreographer and people, you know.
Well, and I'm very lucky because I've done, you know, 83 different related jobs within the industry, which you then realize informs your bigger knowledge. Yeah. And I think you know, I knew that the stagehands are gonna make my show happen.
Yeah.
And the respect for those people and the respect for the seamstress that took that costume that I stepped on the night before and ripped the hell out of and put it back together, and just how every person in this industry really is got a skill and a talent and a craft and we need every single one of them to come together. And because I was a stage manager and I was backstage and I got to see shows in rehearsal and I understood the jobs that all those people were doing and began to recognize the value of it. I think ahead of the curve is all I can say.
Well, you know, sorry, Michael, that does make me sort of fold into, you know, you've recently written a great op-ed in American theater, and I know it was picked up with the Tribune, and about the nature also of the essential element of what we do. And I was really buoyed by that, and I found it incredibly uplifting and also really insightful and inspiring about, like, these are people, these are artists, this is an essential profession. It's people with lives, with families, with same woes of, you know, having health insurance and benefits and a future down the road. And sometimes that can be forgotten, you know, and it was really great to hear you or read that insight in there about our industry. Now more than ever, it's more a realization, I think, about how vital it is for our humanity to have this stuff happening. And so first off, thank you for that. But I mean, it's also an ever-evolving thing. I mean, did you write that because you were feeling obviously the woes of what's happening in our world right now and some of that? Or, I mean,
I started looking at it just from the very tight circle of my theater family here. And, you know, when I had to furlough the entire production staff of this institution with the exception of our production manager, I was crumbling. I mean, it was the worst day of my life because it's like kicking your children out into the world before they're prepared. I mean, we have a schedule and a routine in this theater, and many of the people, I'm very lucky, have worked here for many, many years. This is their job. And the idea that they wouldn't be able to do it was very tough. And the timeline of live theater being able to come back in the way that we all recognize it is questionable. I mean, it's day to day, week to week. And we all make plans because that's what we have to do, but it's hard to know. And so that to me was not an acceptable answer to this staff who has dedicated their time and love and energy to this theater. So it started there. But then I was in a SDC meeting where they talked about, you know, the unemployment rate of the membership was at 98%. I mean, that's 98%. Wow. It's horrible. I mean, wait a minute. I don't know the exact statistics of the Actors Equity membership, but I'm sure it's pretty similar. And so, and I started thinking about what does that mean? And I started hearing the stories of, you know, well, I left New York and I went home because I could work at the grocery store, or I could work for my family, or I maybe got an online teaching job. But it's concerning to me that there are all these people that may have to give up theater as a career because it's going to take so long for it to come back. And what is that going to do to this industry? Both from a, you know, this institution level to the wider regional theater field, to the, you know, whole country, to the whole world, really.
Yeah. And which, you know, and that, obviously there's so much conversation about the Broadway community and what that looks like in New York and everything, which is understandable, the huge mountain in front of that community and getting those plays up and running and those artists back to work and everything. And regionally, how important it is also for what we do as also a vessel for that work there, you know, I mean, like, that's one of the things I've always felt about producing in Utah is like, no, well, this is our collection here of work that we're creating for this community, this region, this state. But that is also energy that gets funneled into New York and vice versa. It's a collective, you know, community process, pipeline, and how vital that is, especially as a professional industry. You know, that's the other part of it. That's I think sometimes people, they take it for granted in that sense of like, no, these are professionals, meaning that they've devoted their entire life to it, and that is their thing, just as they would be in, you know, as you mentioned, the idea of it's not brain surgery. Well, it is not necessarily brain surgery, but it is also like a skill set and a devotion. It's a devotion for people, and they give their life, body, and soul to it, you know. And that is important and vital to our humanity.
That's right.
Because that's the thing that keeps us observing our own follies and our own woes and our own hope and aspirations and collective unity as people. You know, it is an essential workforce for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I have two Utah really. Go ahead. Did you want to comment on that,
Well,
Karen?
I just think that the arts and because it's my thing, you know, live theater, it fits into education, it fits into psychology. I mean, it just fits into the fabric of life, and regional theaters are the local anchor for that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think sometimes, you know, not institutionally, but individual artists are dismissed as not having a real job. And this is a real job. This is their real job. And it's one thing for a 27-year-old to re-examine what they want to do, or even a 35-year-old. But we're now talking about, you know, people in their 40s and 50s who have families and houses and mortgages, who have barely ever applied for unemployment in their life, who are looking at a black hole of unknown. So we have to talk about it and we have to think about it. And I want people in Utah to understand that I'm not saying I know the answer, but we need to be aware of this, because it's someday you're going to want theater back, and you're not going to be able to go like that if every carpenter has gone into the construction business, because there'll be nobody to build the sets.
Yeah. You know, that I know that's been a a conversation. I was just having that conversation yesterday with academics who's teaching theater arts. It's like hearing theater arts students now saying, I'm beginning to question if I need to be thinking about something else, and it breaks your heart because you're like, no, you want to channel and propel young artists to continue to impact the world. And it's heartbreaking to hear that, but you have to kind of, I guess, work around what this weird state of the world is right now and try to keep that stuff infused. It was one of the things another thing I loved about your article, about how you mentioned the idea of like challenging us as artists to think outside, think differently than what we're accustomed to, and also challenging new stories, new writers, new things to become happening, which is another thing. As a classical theater that's doing, these churned out old works of art, it's a good reminder for us to go, well, it's also vital that we buoy new voices and stories about now, about where we are in our contemporary world, whether it's social, economic issues, whatever they are. That stuff is really vital to our well-being going forward. And I was really, really glad you mentioned that, because it's a good reminder that, we also have to be, people that can impact that movement, and provide the means for people to then go, okay, here, let's use some of this collective body to go, can you go write about this? Can you write about this now? It was good to hear.
We're in a time of giant change, social change, obviously, health change, economic change, and that's when the arts always responds, but we don't have the outlet for it right now. But I hope that people are not giving up.
Yeah. How do you, one of the questions I know, just as far as being a producer, and a question about like, how do you pick material when you're building a season, not necessarily looking at a season under COVID, but just like generally, what is some of your thinking about putting that together? Obviously you do a balanced level of programming, which in all genres, and I always like to hear people's insight on what are the things that make you tick when you're putting things together.
It's interesting because I really thought, after a few years, I'm going to get this like routine down and I'm going to know how to pick a season quicker. But it doesn't have a formula, except to say that there tends to be one or two shows that are going to happen in a season, whether it's because that title has suddenly become available and it's something we know we want to do, or it's a new work that we've developed that I want to put forward onto the main stage. So there tends to be one or two things that like started out. And then there's this pile on the shelf right over there of, I really want to do this show one of these days. And, every couple of years I can sneak one in that's like, because I wanted to. Chuck Morey told me that a long time ago before I took this job. I was just asking him about programming. And he said, every once in a while I can put one in because I want to do it. And I know we're not really going to make money on it, but it's an important piece of theater to do.
Yeah.
So either because it's on my bucket list or because it's important to do it, I get one of those in there.
Yeah, and it is sort of like, sometimes it's like shooting fish in a barrel. You're really like, obviously as a non-profit theater, you also have to think about making profit. You have to build revenue, and so for the challenging pieces, sometimes you have to balance that with the things that might be more popular fare and all of that. And
that's right.
That's a struggle sometimes of going, I think this is going to do well. And sometimes, no, you're completely wrong. That tanked at the box office. And do you look at it as a sense of balance essentially when you're putting it overall? That's how we.
Yeah, it's an economic balance. It's dramas and comedies. It's musicals, it's new, it's old. I like to have something that's considered classic. Now, what does that mean? And of course, we always get crap when we do Shakespeare because we get those emails that are like, leave it to Cedar City. I always feel like I need to ask you guys permission if I'm going to do a Shakespearean play. Like, Brian Vaughn holds the rights to Shakespeare.
Well, we have that on the musical. You know this because I'm like, hey, are you going to do that? Oh, Pioneer got the rights to that musical. And yeah, it's the same thing, you know. It's so interesting that way.
But yeah, it's a, you know, a little bit of everything to try to get an overall balance. And of course, then somebody comes to one show and they're like, why don't you do something happy? And it's like, well, that was number 3 and number 5 is a little more serious. And I like it to have a little bit of everything, with the idea that if you are a 7-show subscriber, you're not going to experience the same kind of thing twice in a season, that everything is going to bring you a different experience, whether it's intellectual or emotional or fluff or whatever, that each production has a different element to introduce into the conversation.
Yeah. Cool. And you know, one of the questions that came up, which is sort of around the same way of thinking, is Linda asks, what is the connection that drew you to Utah? And that was another thing I was saying, you know, producing theater in Utah is very different than producing theater in New York or Chicago or Los Angeles. And you have to think of the community and where you are, and also challenging your community also to think differently. And so first off, I mean, what was it that drew you to Utah, and what was that like, you know, for you being here?
You know, as you said, I was a freelance artist. So, you know, part of the game of being a freelance director and choreographer is you go to an interview about a job wherever. And I got a call from my agent that said, you know, Charles Morey from the Pioneer Theater would like to talk to you about coming and doing a project next year. And so I shouldn't say this, I met Chuck in a bar in New York.
Right, yeah.
And we had a wonderful conversation. You know, he called me and asked me to come out and work with him on The Dead. Now, this is not a project that was, you know, $1 million project for this theater. It was a passion project for him.
That James Joyce's The Dead, is that
yeah,
right?
Yeah. So it's a play with some music and some choreography. And, you know, and I said to him, Jewish girl, New York, not Irish, no step dance. He said, you know, but I like the way you think about the drama and the storytelling, so I'd love you to do this. So I came out, and I didn't know. I had never been to Utah. I didn't know about the art scene here. And I became instantly fascinated by it because it's vibrant for a city of this size, and smart and educated and curious. That said, there are, you know, complications, especially coming from New York, where content is not an issue in New York City.
Right.
But I love that there is a symphony here and an opera and a ballet company and a Lort Theater company, and then smaller companies and Utah Shakes and Logan Festival Opera. And I just, it's astonishing. I mean, I don't know if anybody's done a study, but to feel that there's such a big arts community was very exciting. And when Chuck asked me to come back to work on that little musical Les Mis, I said, yeah, sure. Why not? So
can I follow up with another Utah question? Because I think you have a lot to say in this area. What do you see as theater's role, and specifically Pioneer Theater Company's role in the cultural landscape of the state? I know it's a big question, but I saw you smile there. So what do you see as your role, and what is your job as artistic director in making that happen?
That's a doctoral thesis, but
I know.
I mean, I think the answer for me, and it probably doesn't make everybody happy for me to say this, but I think my job as an artistic director is, on the one hand, to satisfy as wide an audience as I possibly can, and on the other hand, to push them. And some people are going to want to be pushed and some people are not. And some people are very excited about being pushed, and some people are very unhappy and you know, step back. That's theater.
Yeah.
That's what theater is. Theater is meant to push and to challenge. There are, and I will say, there are plays I won't do because it will make too many people uncomfortable here. And that's not a judgment on the play, and it's not a judgment on the people, but this is also a business, and there's a reality to it. But there are plays that I know are really going to push. I mean, I did Clybourne Park. That has language that is offensive and meant to be offensive and meant to make you open your eyes and look around. I was not going to do that play.
And was received beautifully by the majority of your audience who had never seen that. And it's a fabulous piece.
Yeah.
So again, that goes to that balance. You know, how do I balance this with the Les Mis, which we know will bring box office, but at the same time using theater to teach and get where we need to be.
Yeah, I mean, I think you said it, you hit it with this idea of like, you have to provide, you know, and you also have to challenge. And so it's sort of like this thing about going, you know, here's this thing, which, you know, a whole collective audience might enjoy. And then here's this other thing that's going to go, hey, think about this thing over here that might be worth looking at. The balance of that is, I find, really engaging and really wonderful. And it's one of the things I always come back to about, like, when you ask people their favorite experience going to the theater, more often than not, it's the thing that they least expected when they went in and they saw it. It just overwhelmed them and it took them into a new place. And sometimes it's hard to kind of go, oh, I'm going to put all my eggs in this basket on this play that I know is going to have a great impact, but I'm not sure if the collective body is going to react the same way that I do. And so sometimes we go, oh yeah, well, let's hold on to the things that we know have done well in New York, or they're more popular, or they're lighthearted, or family friendly, or all these things that we think about it, which are all great. But then there's those other ones that you go, man, I did not expect, you know, I was blown away by what that play says, socially relevant, whatever it is about us as human beings and interconnectivity. And that's the stuff, those are the home runs that we try to get all the time, you know, and it's tricky when you're running a theater, because
how do you,
business, you know, you
how
have
do you
to
find those?
I throw them out the window and see which ones land with the title page up, and that's what I know. You know, it's a guess. And I see a lot of theater. I'm very lucky. I'm a Tony voter. So I get to see all the shows on Broadway. I have to see all the shows on Broadway to qualify. So I'm current in that market of having seen things. I mean, Brian, you know, I read as much as I can. You can never actually get ahead of that curve. And I go with my gut. I mean, there are things that are easy. Like, I knew that this audience would like The Play That Goes Wrong. It was as close to a no-brainer as I can get to, you know, seeing a show and looking at it and go, okay, our audience will like this. They will actually really, really like this. And they did. And it was one of the hardest things to direct I've ever done, just logistically, but yay, we did it.
Yeah.
But like, then there's surprises that we did Sweeney Todd because it was a bucket list for me. But I mean, I'll say it. It was a very good production. We did a great job. It was one of those theater experiences where the designers and the music director and me and the cat, it was just like came together and everyone was on the same page. And I think the production reflected that, and it was really well received, but I wasn't expecting that. Mm-hmm. So,
wow.
You know, some of that speaks to, I think when you do it right, people see it. Now, sometimes when you do it right, they still don't come. And I think what's tricky about that here is, and I don't know how to fix it, people want to know what they're coming to see. And I think sometimes your best theater experiences are where you walk in and you're like, I've no idea what this is.
Yeah.
And you just sit down and let it wash over you and take it for what it is and experience it.
Yeah.
If you
Which
know
is,
too much, it's not fun anymore.
yeah, well, it's like going to a movie, and it's really like most of the time you don't know what's happening in a movie.
Right.
You maybe know a little bit of the plot going in or the, basic premise, but you go in not knowing. But the theater is very different. There is this thing about, no, I want to know what I'm going into, and not be surprised. And I'm like you. I want to encourage people to go, no, go in not knowing,
Yeah.
let it wash over you, and I mean, like, I think, and I think you have done that with your level. I mean, I saw your production of Sweat, Lynn Nottage's Sweat, which I found incredibly relevant and powerful, and wasn't a full house, not like Les Mis or, something that is more accessible to an audience, but so profound and so great. And I think in some ways, it's like you want to encourage people to go to those experiences that might be different from yours, to see something new, and that does seem like that's a collective endeavor for us here.
Right.
Can you articulate that? Because we've seen your audience advisories, which are, when I'm at a restaurant, when I'm at a classic restaurant, I don't ask the chef, I need to see a list of the saffron and all of those things. But you are correct. Within Utah, to reduce a script to, it contains this many of this word and this many of this word. And we have been fortunate, if I can speak this way, Brian, to have kind of held the line on that and have not had to do that. But I know that your organization made the choice to do that because your public was demanding that. Can you articulate a little bit about how that process happened?
It all predates me, but I actually, when I learned about it, I was like, I think that's terrific, because if that's really what your hang up is,
mm-hmm.
I'm not going to be able to convince you otherwise. No one is going to be able to convince you otherwise. If counting the number of times a word is used,
right,
is what you're doing sitting in the theater, then you're not taking in the play. So you might as well not be there. Don't spend your money there.
Right.
I would hope that, the times that an audience member comes to a show that has some content and comes because they really want to see that play or that musical and lets it happen, maybe we've started to sway somebody. And if it's only said 2 or 3 times, maybe I'll go see that play next time because this was a good experience. It's not, in that sense, I think, for me to change what people are going to find acceptable. However, what I will not find acceptable, and is sometimes a question we are posed here, is why don't you just take those words out?
Yeah.
And that's not going to happen.
And will you answer
besides the fact that it's against the law?
Yeah, it's against the law, but will you answer the question about why you will not take those words out? There's a reason. There's an artistic reason. Why is that?
Because the playwright's intention includes those words, and they wrote it with those words in mind to elicit certain reactions. Now, for some people, those reactions are probably greater in some cases than what that playwright intended, but it doesn't matter. That's what the playwright intended.
Yeah.
And our contract actually says you won't do that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Well, it's the same. I mean, it is an interesting. I feel the exact same way. It's like the playwright has slaved over that, and more often than not, they've had workshops, they've had other productions, they've rewritten it, they've gone to task, and so to just go, oh no, we can make that something different, is a little bit like a slap in the face. It's. I find it like going to a Van Gogh painting and like, oh no, these need to be smoothed down. This is too 3-dimensional. Let's rub that out. And it's like, well, no, that's the artist's work. That's there for a reason. It's evocative to what they're writing in the moment. And I share the same sentiment. And it's hard. I mean, you must know, I think about that with like, even Neil Simon, like punctuation, you know, like I'll never forget that. It's like, you know, when you're doing The Odd Couple, if you don't have a comma here, or if this is not a question, it's not going to land the same way it was. And that stuff is almost like doing Shakespeare. You comb through the text and you look at the meter and the rhythm and all of that. And all of that is in contemporary plays too, the same thing. The poetry of now is
That's right.
you know,
Which is what I also want to celebrate, because, and I love that we've got two artistic directors having this conversation about you, because we wouldn't be having this conversation in New Jersey or in New York or anything like that. But it's also unique because we are having that conversation. I mean, sometimes we go, oh, why do we have to worry about this? But the words have power. I mean, that punctuation has power. And we are making a choice by pushing you and hearing this.
Right.
And that's what I enjoy. I want to invite our Facebook listeners to continue posting questions. We have a couple here now. Do we want to go to those yet? There's still some questions that I think we want to ask though, Brian.
Go for it. I mean, either way is fine. I mean,
Well,
some of these are great. Some of these I do want to mention as far as, you know, some of your efforts at Pioneer too over the summer,
right.
which I love. You know, a question that comes up here is like, well, you're not producing. Are you guys doing anything? You know, and like, you know, we're working really consistently, and in many ways, there's more meetings now than there ever have been, and a lot of work. But you guys are also doing some wonderful, you know, humanitarian efforts at the theater, which would you like to talk about, which I find really wonderful in the offering that you have on your website for
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, back to where we were talking about furloughing staff. I wanted to put my staff back to work, and without producing shows on the production side, that was not possible. So I started with one of our costume shop members who, because of a teaching gig, was not able to collect unemployment. And we started making face masks and have expanded that effort. We now have 3 members of the costume shop back making face masks, which we're selling on our website. The fabrics change every week. It's my big artistic decision of the week is what are our fabrics this week. And then we carried it over to the scene shop, and some of those folks are making wine racks and candle holders and shopping bags from recycled scenic materials. We have reusable shopping bags out of old scenic drops, and we have you know, votive candle holders out of barrel staves, and we've gone into storage, and we're looking at stuff that we would throw away or get rid of, and trying to repurpose them and make some money so I can rehire people. So we have 2 more people plus our production manager back in the scene shop working. And you can purchase any of those things if you go on our website and look at the cute items we have for sale. We're also selling off props and furniture that we feel like we can cull our stock a little bit. So like if you want a little table that was used in Light in the Piazza, you could buy it.
That's great.
Yeah.
A question that came up, which is similar. Leslie asks, will the show Must Go Online be returning?
Yes. Oh, that's sweet. Yes. Everybody got a little, I tapped out my resources a little bit on that one because we had so much
content. We lost you. I think you might be muted.
You're muted there. There you go.
Back?
Yes,
yep.
There you go.
Well, our resources of actors kind of went a little bit, I used everybody up. I needed to give everybody a break. I also wanted to find a new sort of approach to it, but we are discussing the return of The Show Goes Online.
Good.
That's great.
Good. Some really great questions here, and let's hope we can get through all of these. Amanda asks, What advice would you give to someone who wants to be an artistic director? Are there things we can be doing during these uncertain times to work towards that goal?
Well, I'll say what my dad said, go find another job. This one is hard. I think it's learn as much about as many things as you possibly can. I worked briefly as an assistant to the company manager in my dad's office, so I began to learn how to read financial statements and budgets.
Mm-hmm.
And frankly, that serves me very well. As an artist, I wouldn't necessarily think of learning more of those intricacies. So anything like that is really helpful. And read, and then read some more. Because the more you've read about plays and musicals, the wider your circle of thought can be.
Yeah, I've always been like, familiarize yourself with budgets and budgeting and, Excel spreadsheets and all the things. Sometimes as an artist, you're like, what is this?
Yeah. Ooh.
Yeah.
That's, I guess, the similar question Amanda said, what advice would you give someone who wants to be an artist? Oh, that was what you just asked over there. This is from Tanya. What is it about a play that makes you decide it's worth the risk of challenging your audiences, maybe versus one that isn't as worth the risk?
I go from a very personal place on that. If I saw it and was affected, I'm gonna lean towards it. There's some plays that I have said I'm just not interested in doing it. It didn't do it for me, and maybe I was having a bad day. And sometimes that is true, and I go back 2 years later and reconsider something. But I feel like the community sounds awful. The community is investing in me and my artistic barometer. And they are asking me, you go research all of this. And so if I don't like it, if it doesn't affect me, why am I asking my audience to be affected by it? So it ends up coming most of the time from a very personal place. And I think then I can honestly speak to it with the community, with the press, with the audience, with the director, with whoever, that I cried, I laughed, whatever. I mean, play that goes wrong, I went with my teenage son and we were sobbing, we were laughing so hard. And I went in kind of with one of those, it's going to be one of those Brit shows where they just are so over the top. It's going to be too much. And I mean, we could barely walk out of the theater. We were laughing so hard.
Yeah.
Similarly with dramas that way. It's like, if I can't talk afterwards, that's a good play. Yeah.
Totally. I mean, I have the same thing. And it is that thing. It just hits you in a way that it kind of hits you in the pelvis in ways you don't imagine. I had that experience with Every Brilliant Thing when I read it for the first time. I was just like, I knew we had to do this play, and I immediately reread it. It just hit me somehow, and both in its theatricality, its simplicity, it was just unknown. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is, and you can also see your theater doing it, which is another thing. I don't know if you think about that often or not, but I love that. Then there are those shows that you go, oh my God, like Brief Encounter was that when I saw that on Broadway, I was like, oh my gosh, this is an amazing, unbelievable experience. And I was like, I don't know if we can ever do that in our theater.
Yeah.
Because of the technical demands and the challenges in doing it, but it changes you as individuals. Danny asks, what are some things that you think will change in the future?
Oh, everything changes. My hope in terms of the nuts and bolts of theater is that, we will get past this time of social distancing and we will be able to go back to having the brass players sit in the orchestra pit and blow their trumpets without worrying that somebody is going to be sick and, get infected in front of them, and that dancers will be able to partner each other and be lifted, and kissing scenes will be able to happen in romantic plays. But emotionally we're never going to be changed by this, and maybe it will change the meaning of things. I mean, touching someone when we first come back from all of this is going to take on a level of meaning that we are completely have never seen before, or maybe we saw it 100 years ago. Yeah. And I think the social activism changes that are happening during this time are going to impact theater institutions, so that hopefully as they come back, the diversity look will be even more present right away. There's in this moment, it's just very complicated because enacting change when you aren't doing anything is hard. But I think it also gives everybody a moment to think about it and to really fold it into all future planning.
Yeah, I share the same thinking there. I think that that's definitely going to be the thing, which hopefully will be a more collective, unified expression of what we do. And it's vital for our industry, obviously, and moving forward, and new perspective, new change, new stories, new thinking, more collective. Just great. Jim Voles asks, what would you say to young college, hi Jim, what would you say to young college age students who are asking, should I change my theater major? And is this a viable field where I can make a living and feed my family? That's a good question, obviously.
Yes, you can.
Yeah.
You're going to have to be creative. And then the harsher side of me will say, if you're questioning it, maybe you should.
Yeah.
This is a tough field. I mean, there's no field that's not tough, but you have to want this. You're going to have to want it, and you're going to have to use your creative side to figure out, in pandemic and post-pandemic, how am I going to supplement my income? What is that other thing I'm going to do that's going to help while I'm building a career? And am I okay with that? Because some people are not comfortable with the ups and downs of a theater career, and the wondering where your next job is going to come from syndrome has to be something that in a certain way you can accept. And if you're not comfortable with that, you're never really going to be comfortable in this field, because that's just how it goes. It's tough. It's tough on your soul. You have to be ready to deal with that.
Yeah, that old adage, if you could do something else, do it. That thing is very true. What I'm also encouraged by is, like, I know the theater is one thing, but as far as art and the industry, there's so many different avenues, that within the industry, whether it's digital or television, film, radio, and we're seeing more and more creativity happening now by this sort of obstacle that's in our way about getting back. Will we come back? Yes. I mean, I am optimistic there. I think the profession has lived through other pandemics and plagues, and I always reference Shakespeare, who became incredibly prolific, and King Lear was written during a plague, and and is now regarded as one of the masterpieces of Western civilization. That will be happening now, and I do think us coming back at it is important. And will it look different? Yes. Should it look different? Yes. And it's also like, that's where we're going to be thinking about doing it. We're just so stagnant right now. It's just like in this weird sort of parallel universe of uncertainty, but there is another side, and I'm encouraged by it. And so I hope, I do think there is the thing about, like, have a backup plan, have a skill set that in case we have this thing that, you can do that. We're sort of seeing that now. That would be my advice for young people going into the industry, is try to broaden your skill set so that you can cross filter your talent in different avenues,
Right.
hard to do though, also because some people are so strong at doing what they do, you know what I mean? And when it's forced to say, you can't do that anymore right now, is really hard and scary. And I know that, that's one of the things about actors that are out there that I have such sympathy for and understanding and heartfelt hope that we'll get back at it, because it's their life force, it's their lifeblood, it is their vocation, their calling. And not only actors, also it's artists all across the board.
Yeah.
But it will get better.
It will.
Can I ask this question? And we're kind of coming up on time here, and I think this is a good question to kind of close with. And I might be asking both of you artistic directors this question. Before we got on here, we talked about how tough the times are and how we're busier now, how you both are busier now than you were in your incredibly busy time before, but how debilitating and soul-sucking sometimes this Zoom format is. So what do you do to keep going on? I know this sounds like, a positive, putting that together. But what does Karen do, when Annie sings The Sun Will Come Out Tomorrow? What advice would she provide to not just artists, but others, so that we can, you said it, I'd encourage everybody to go back and read the article, which is what inspired us to go, we have got to get Karen on here.
Wow.
But what would how do you wake up each morning?
I think the thing that I use to sort of sell myself as an artistic director and to some extent as a director and choreographer is, and Brian knows this, I'm relentless. I can't give up. I have to opening night is the end of a process on a show, but I will push everyone to the last second to try to up the ante and get the most out of every opportunity. And I think I'm so mad at COVID doing what it's done to us, that relentless energy is channeled into managing it. Fine, I will put some of my people back to work, and here's how I'm going to do it. And I will make some plans for artists to get some work done, and I will push to see if we can do a spring season, and I will have 7 backup plans, and I will discuss to anyone who will listen how important it is that the arts are supported. Because what did everybody do when we got shut down?
Mm-hmm.
That's what I say in that piece is, we turned to online everything.
Yeah.
We want this. So I'm not prepared to give up. and it's just because I'm stubborn. I won't lose this fight.
Well done.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well done. Brian, do you have any final words before we close?
Well, there is a link to your article in the Facebook comments. Tony, you want me to put that up there? And I think that's good for people to sort of read that. And no, I first off, I'm incredibly grateful for your time and insight and perspective, and keep carrying on and putting up the good fight. And it's wonderful to hear your perspective. I could chat with you all day, and I look forward to knowing when we can collaborate again under normal circumstances and not via Zoom. But it's really, really wonderful, and thank you for being here. And
this is fun. It's nice to sort of have a moment of, oh yeah, I remember what it's like to talk to a colleague, just not about how are you going to manage your budget this year.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, it's this has been a joy. One of the treasures. This one's for the ages, so bookmark this one.
Well, thanks.
Because I really I am very grateful for what you do at PTC, what you at Pioneer Theater Company. I am very grateful for what you do for the cultural landscape of this state, not just Salt Lake, the cultural landscape of the whole region. And if there are viewers that are not aware, although we tend to share our patrons here, you need to check out the great work that's happening up there, because it's really, really great stuff. And I love seeing the energy that you and the articulate advocacy that you convey for the power of the theater and what it does. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, here. Go support the theater.
Yeah.
We'll do it.
And the state, which I was really glad that you said that, because it is an incredibly vibrant arts community here, and it is not just these.
We have the conversations down here all the time. I'm sure you may have it. I mean, it's go. They got to Curious Incident. Go. They got. They did Clybourne. Yeah. Yeah, I wish we could have done Clybourne, but that's gonna be a while before we do that.
Well, and even the ones that you do again, that's one of the things I love about it. Also, is that actually it's great to see multiple productions of it. Believe me, we do Shakespeare. It's like people continually see productions for over and over, and so that's what I love about the state. There's so many arts organizations here, and it's really
unique. Yeah, and there have been studies. People have done studies, and when they get here, as you know, you come in and go, "Whoa, what is this place?"
Yeah.
I mean, it's why. What is this blue? I love the way you articulate it as a curiosity. Yeah, there's a curiosity, and I think within the culture, a hunger for that challenge. That you won't find in other places. So thank you for articulating that. So as we gush on, I do want to thank our patrons for viewing and remind you that you can find these and other conversations on our bard.org website. If you go down to the bottom of the page, it says Virtual Festival, and you'll find all the offerings listed there. You can also find those on our YouTube channel, which we would recommend that you subscribe and continue listening. Next week, I am very excited. We get to talk about some really uncelebrated heroes, and that is our Green Show performers. And we're going to be talking to Britannia Howe, who has directed the last 2 years of the Green Show. And I'm really excited that Daria Ritas and Andre Spathelf Sanders is going to be with us, in addition to Brian Vaughn, who long ago was also in the Green Show. Tomorrow, there you go. Ben Holman is actually going to be joining us tomorrow at 1 o'clock. And just a reminder, next week we will not be at 10 o'clock. We will be at 11 because we have school starting down here, and we need to do that to accommodate school schedules. So thank you so much for joining us. And I want to thank you again, Karen, for everything you do. And we look forward to seeing you not only online, but live on our stages again.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you both so much. This is fun.